Welcome into episode 6 of the Fourth and Whinges podcast with your hosts Mark and Rob. Episode 6, Rob, who thought we'd get here?
I know, episode 6 already. I was just thinking that, crazy.
It's crazy. I don't know why, but I think that it seemed ages since we recorded the last one, to me.
Yeah, it has actually.
I've been thinking all week, God, it's ages since we did a podcast. It's like, well, no, we did one on like Wednesday and then Sunday last week or something, but it seems to flow by. So episode 6, what we're going to cover today is we obviously, for those regular viewers, we did our fantasy draft last Sunday. So we're going to quickly kind of recap that by just handing out some draft grades because, you know, we're the experts and all that. So we're going to we're going to do that.
What we say goes. If we say your draft was rubbish, your draft was rubbish.
So apologies to those people who maybe don't get the grade we're hoping for.
No apologies. Be better at drafting.
Be better at drafting, yeah. So we're gonna do that. Then we're going to look at what has been obviously the biggest news story of the last sort of 7 days is just the release of the NFL schedule. So we're going to talk through that in a bit of detail. Obviously, always exciting when that comes out and you get to see who your team's going to be playing week 1 and stuff like that. So we're going to touch on that a little bit, and then what we're also going to do now that we have the schedule and we've had free agency and we've had the draft, pretty much the meat of the off season has kind of been done now. So we're going to look at what our way too early kind of divisional picks are. Really, we're going to go through and see who we think are going to win each of the divisions. We've done that, and then we can have a chat about that and who, briefly, I guess at this stage, who we might think would go on and win the Super Bowl potentially. So yeah, and then I've got a little bit of a whinge of the week as well. So we'll do that at the end. So yeah, and we're going to try this like always. We're going to try and get this in under an hour today, and I'm sure it'll happen. So with that, let's kick off with the draft grades then. So for anybody who's new to this episode, welcome. We've got a Dynasty Fantasy Football League, and we held our veteran draft a few months ago. We had our rookie draft the last Sunday, where we did a live stream, which was interesting.
I forgot to make a trade in that, but never mind.
But we did that. It was a lot going on for us to kind of be hosting this and doing the draft. But all in all, I think it went okay. We certainly didn't between us have the worst draft, I didn't think, which will be apparent when we go through the grades now. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to kind of go through yours first and then mine, or do you want to pick a person and see?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I mean, I'll go through mine first if you like. As Matt's at the top of the show, obviously this is factual that we're going to talk about now. So there's no argument with it. Mark and I are obviously correct, and everybody else is an idiot. So that's how it goes. So just to start with me, I've given myself an A star. I haven't. So the person I've given the highest grade to actually is Girth. Considering at the end of our last podcast we asked him what he was doing, I think he did pretty well, to be fair. So just looking at his draft, sort of picking the bones out of it really. So he took Travis Etienne at 4th. He took Jalen Waddle 8th. Justin Field with the 3rd pick of the 2nd round. Micah Parsons with the 9th pick of the 2nd round. Zaven Collins with the 9th pick of the 4th round, and then Patrick Surtain with the 7th pick of the 5th. So in terms of his best pick, I thought that was probably Justin Fields. The value got there. Worst pick was Patrick Surtain, which reasons anybody's listened to Mark and I before. Just picking top tier quarterbacks in fantasy, I don't think works because they don't get targeted and they don't get the opportunity to influence the game. But just sort of not to dwell on that. I thought ETN, I'd have probably gone Williams, as I think you probably would, Mark, just in terms of landing spot and all of that. I thought Waddle was, good value at 8. And then Fields, I think we both probably had him taking Fields in the 1st round in sort of when we tried to mock it through. Yeah. And then for me, he got sort of the 2 best linebackers, possibly, arguably, in the draft with Micah Parsons, Zaven Collins. So I've given him an A overall for that. So well done, Girth. Part of the back to you.
Yeah, I thought Girth had the strongest draft as well. I gave him an A plus. And yeah, as my notes kind of say on screen there, I love it. The only way for me it could have been better is Surtain if he'd have picked somebody else at that pick, maybe a safety or one of the wide receivers. Yes, he got a wide receiver earlier, but I think there was some good value still at that point at the wide receiver position. So I think that, other than that, I agree. I think it was a really, really good draft. He picked up, well, I suppose you could say he picked up 2 wide receivers in Etienne and Waddle, because isn't Etienne going to play wide receiver for the Jags this year? Apparently?
Yeah, absolutely. What's wrong with that? For anybody that missed that, Urban Meyer came out and said Travis Etienne is going to take all his snaps at rookie minicamp at wide receiver. So there you go.
The more I hear about Urban Meyer and his plans for the Jags, I'm not so sure this is a good move, mate, to be honest.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Yes, I agree. Girth for me was the top draft for me. Who have you got second on your list?
So second on my list, I had, well, I kind of had people tied, and then I tried to move it around. So I gave Tom an A-, I gave Ash an A-, I gave Gaz an A-, and I gave you, Mark, an A-. You'll be pleased to know. I know you hang on my every word, and you need my approval of all of your picks. I was going to touch on Gaz, actually. That sounded weird, not in that way. But so he didn't really have that many picks because he traded quite a few of them away. But the ones he did have, I thought he did well. I tried to sort of factor in the trade. So earlier on it was a big bone of contention in our fantasy chat that he absolutely fleeced Tom for Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
So he used good use of his first and second round pick there to get McCaffrey on board, I thought. And then he only had 4 picks, as I say. So he picked 4-4, 4-8, 5-2, and 5-3. 4-4, he took JOK, who I know I've just said I think Girth probably got the best 2 linebackers, but on my board I had JOK first. 4-8, he took Adafe Owe, who I think we spoke about, wasn't really getting all the sacks in college, but all the skills are there. His athleticism, his, all of that. So I think he could be an absolute game wrecker. Larry Roundtree, 5-2. I thought that was a smart little pickup. Potential he could start. And then Emir Smith-Marset, he picked with 5-3, which again, going into that Vikings team, they've got obviously Thielen and Jefferson, but behind that, I think there's a chance he could take get some targets and be a decent pick at sort of at that pick really. But I tried to factor in the trades, and that's probably why I've boosted him up a bit there. He did also trade with me prior to the draft, and picked up Zeke for next season as well. So I think overall he did pretty well there.
Yeah, and probably what we're seeing here, because I had him as a C there, but I think what I've done here is I've messed up, and actually he must have traded that pick then, because I had Girth taking JOK, which is why I've not given him as a higher grade as you have.
Let me check that. I'm right.
No, I've just checked it. You are right.
In your face, Mark.
So maybe I wouldn't give Girth an A+ after all. Maybe I'd just give him an A.
Right. Okay.
And then Gareth, probably I would have him because I gave him a C at this point. But what I didn't do is I didn't factor in the trade for McCaffrey. To be honest, I didn't I probably should have done, but I didn't. I was just looking at the picks and stuff. So I only gave him a C. But no, you're right. I think with JOK and with Owe, you've got definitely 2 high potential people there, and then when you factor in that he essentially traded his first and second pick for Christian McCaffrey, barring injury, he's got a top 3 running back there. So
absolutely,
good value from Gareth. I think the next one, I guess that we've got a little bit of difference on, is Chris's pick. I think you've dinged her for a middle of the round pick of somebody who wasn't even a rookie. Clearly problems with the sleeper app there, where they still have players who were rookies last year that didn't actually play a game marked as rookies. So I've spoken to her and she can't give me an answer as to why she took that player middle of the round. I think she's just gone a bit mental, to be honest. But you've dinged her a bit for that. But outside of that pick, I mean, that was an extra pick that she had from an earlier trade. Anyway, I think, or at least it was an A pick that, it was a 7th pick of the draft, if you like. For the 6 players that she did get that are still on the roster, I think are really good. And definitely. I'm going to say that though, because at the end of the day, a lot of her football knowledge comes through me chatting away and giving my opinion. So obviously, some of the, if she's picking players that I talk about, then obviously I'm going to like them. So it's maybe a bit inflated on that basis. But, Carter, Frymouth, Powell, Ojolari, we know I like him. Jabril Cox, even in the 6th round, I think he could potentially be starting this year, as early as this year, and be a tackle machine. So I think she's got, she's got a really good draft.
Oh, definitely. I mean, to get Jabril Cox in the 6th, I thought was fantastic. I think I probably had her best pick as Michael Carter, really.
Yeah,
I thought it was a great pickup at the start of the 2nd. Smith, I have my concerns about, but you look at where he's going in other rookie drafts, he's going top 5, top 6. So to get him at the end of the round, good value. I know we have our worries about that Eagles offense, and I have concerns about his size and his weight. But Heisman Trophy winner, you can't really pass.
No, and I think certainly the concerns about the quarterback player, the Eagles, I think probably only for 2021, because they'll have to either we'll be proven wrong, or he'll be really bad. They'll be picking early. They'll get a quarterback next year. Problem solved. So yeah, longer term, I think there's definitely the potential there for Smith to be really good.
Definitely.
Anybody else that we've not touched on there? So well, let me give you my opinion of you can see on screen here.
I thought that'd be good if we gave each other our opinions, and then I think there is one person we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss. Yes,
absolutely. So as I said, they're on screen there for anybody viewing it on YouTube. What grades we gave people. So I gave you, Rob. I actually was was the same as I think you gave yourself, kind of a B+. For me, it was a good draft. Especially given that you didn't have a 1st round pick. Obviously, you did a lot of wheeling and dealing, like we've said. And the big talking point coming out of this, really, from your point of view, is you had a good draft, a good solid B+ draft, but you also have umpteenth 1st round picks next year. So obviously, you did some dealing, wheeling and dealing and whatnot. In terms of who you took, Rondale Moore. I really like him as a prospect. We talked about him before. In theory, he's in a really good landing spot in Arizona. So from a fantasy point of view, he could be really, really good. I do have some slight concerns over Kingsbury and the fact that this year's it's going to be a really telling season for him. And either they will be better than people expect, or he probably will be looking for a new job next year. Not because they've totally underperformed, but I think they're just they're not going anywhere. They're kind of stagnant, and they're not what people thought or expected from him in that offense. So it could be make or break, and Rondale Moore could be a reason why they do really, really well. But I still think your best value pick is Marshall. Love Marshall. There were some mocks that I did where I was taking him in the 2nd round. I even contemplated taking him in the 1st round. So to get him in round 3, I think he's an absolute steal. Really do. So I think that's a really good pickup. Then I think you went with a mixed bag to a degree, but I still think, again, there's certainly potential to have real value there. Chuba Hubbard, Trey McKitty is your tight end that you were adamant you were getting at some point in this draft by hook or by crook. And then Javion Hawkins, we talked about. I was kind of high on him. He went undrafted, didn't he? And
did go undrafted.
So some may see that as a bit rich, given that he was undrafted. But I think the talent's there, and
it was mainly due to his some things in his personal life and some stupid things he's done, not necessarily his talent level. Why he went undrafted. He's just in a great situation there that we've discussed.
Absolutely. So I think solid draft. I gave you B+.
Thank you.
Middle of the. Not necessarily middle of the road. I think you were top 5. What, 1, 2, 3, 4? Yeah, top 5.
No, I'll take it. I mean, I stuck to my board. I was very pleased, like you said, for Marshall to still be there. I was an hour and over taking Marshall or more at 210. And then to take more for Marshall still to be there on my next pick, I was absolutely, I was made up with that. I've liked Chuba Hubbard. I liked him. Not necessarily last season. He wasn't as good, but the season before he was another level. If he'd have come out after that season, I think he'd have been. Talked about in the same breath as Harris and ETN and Williams. He's not in an ideal spot, but I just sort of I had a punt on his talent and the fact that McCaffrey's been a bit banged up recently. If that doesn't work out, he's in line to get the majority of the carries there. So I kind of dinged myself for that. That was probably a bit high.
But I even think on the McCaffrey front, though, he plays, again, like Etienne's going to do in Jacksonville, I guess. He plays quite a few snaps at wide receiver. So there's the chance that they're both on the field at the same time.
There is. I think really I should have probably taken the best IDP available at that point. So I should have possibly taken JOK or Collins, really, was what I've kind of dinged myself on. But yeah, McKitty, I was always going to take McKitty. I was tempted to take McKitty in the start of the third, to be honest, just because I wanted him.
Just because you wanted him, yeah, absolutely. But no, I think you did a decent job of sticking to your board, like I said, and plus the picks that you've got for next year. I think solid.
Yeah, I'm very happy with next year. I hope we last longer than a year doing this league, otherwise I'll be gutted.
Yeah, absolutely. It needs to run for a few years, doesn't it? To see the strategies and all of that come into play, because everyone can have we've had our first draft, which is pretty much like just doing a redraft league. Anybody could win it, depending on what happens in the season. What's different, obviously, about the dynasty is that we're looking further ahead, so we want it to run for a number of years, so we can rise to the top, so to speak.
Hold on, there is somebody at the door, which is why the dog's going mental.
We've got a special guest on the show today.
You might just have to vamp, and I will go get the door, or we could cut this.
No problem. So we've talked about Girth and Chrissy's draft. Another one that I had really high was Tom's. I gave Tom an A-, so he was kind of third in my rankings of the draft. Had the number one overall pick, so there's some pressure there not to screw that up. He took the person that pretty much everybody seemed to be after, who was Kyle Pitts at tight end. So that's a solid pick. If he turns out to be a top 5 tight end in the league, then well worth that value. At number one overall. Then Tom went on and picked Zach Wilson, who was my top-rated quarterback at the start of the second round, well, pick 14, so kind of midway through round 2. And then to also get Amon-Ra St. Brown in round 2 as well, was good. Good value. Kenneth Gainwell at running back in round 3, and then 2 defensive players a little bit later on in the draft. So yeah, all in all, I gave Tom an A-. Really like that draft. Very solid. So we've touched on Girth's, Chrissy's, Tom's. How do you think I did then? Go on, get. He's gone. Okay, I'll carry on with Ash for me. So Ash, I gave Ashley a B. Had quite a few picks. 7 picks in all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Yeah, 7 picks. Can't do the maths. So he had 7 picks, picking 2 running backs in early in round 1 with Najee Harris and Javonte Williams. To say I was a little bit gutted, picking at number 6, and Ashley took Javonte Williams at 5. To say I was a little bit gutted is a bit of an understatement. I desperately wanted Ashley to not do that, and to pick Williams just there was a nightmare for me. But I'm not surprised, because there was a little bit of a need there at running back, and to get the top 2 running backs in this draft, was shrewd bit of business, really, thinking about it.
I think I especially like there, he basically swapped Josh Jacobs for Najee Harris, which I think was a fantastic piece of business. That
no, absolutely. So I think solid draft. Not the best, not the biggest Bateman fan personally, and I didn't think his landing spot was the greatest. However, again, to get somebody like Bateman, pick 10, I thought there's still potential for it to be a really good pick there. Trey Sermon, a lot of people rate him a lot higher than I do, but still, again, good value for running back there. Maybe, is there a need for all 3? Possibly not, but I still think, there's value there. And running backs, if running backs turn out well, they're a huge commodity in fantasy. There's every chance that they could be traded away for future picks and things like that. So there's definitely still value there. And then Russo and Moses, defensively in round 4 and 5 were pretty decent value where he took them. The only question mark really for me that didn't have him as maybe the best draft was that pick in the 6th round, Dwayne Eskridge. I don't rate him that highly personally. Seattle, obviously Ash is a Seattle fan, and he went to Seattle, didn't he? So maybe there's a little bit of home bias there, but he would be the only real question mark for me there, because I think if he hadn't have taken him, he could have got him, afterwards as an undrafted player or something.
It was the last pick of the draft in Ash's.
Yeah, well, true. Yeah, to be fair, it was the last pick as well. So maybe I'm being a bit too harsh, but yeah.
I heard you sort of discussing Tom's as well. I too like Tom's. I think the only thing I dinged him for on that was that Gainwell was good value. He took him on Ra St. Brown very high. I think he took him at 2.7, 2.8. And at that point, obviously, I was made up because there was still Rondale Moore and Terrace Marshall left on the board. I understand why he did it, because in theory, he's going to be seeing a lot of the field, but they
could be the number one wide receiver there.
He could, but I mean, they have Brashad Perryman, they have Tyrell Williams, who I don't think are amazing, but they are NFL wide receivers. They've got Quintus Cephas, who they drafted last year, who they obviously like, and I think there's probably a reason why St. Brown did drop a bit. I think he didn't get picked to the 4th round. It's very, very harsh, and you're doing it for upside. Will Jared Goff be there next season? Possibly not. They've fixed their offensive line potentially with Penei Sewell. If you look at the future, then yeah, it could be very bright. That was just a minor niggle, because I had to niggle him somewhere. I couldn't just tell him.
Well, I was maybe higher on Amon-Ra St. Brown after the draft, because I'm a total and utter geek. I've already started looking at 2022 draft picks. So I've been looking. There's a quarterback at USC who's probably going to be coming out next year, who's been appearing very high on draft boards, and I'm like, who is this guy? I've never heard of him. So I started looking at him recently, and obviously you're looking at a quarterback for a team. You get
is it Slovis?
Yeah, Keaton Slovis. Yeah, and because I was kind of looking at some of his tape, I then obviously saw Amon-Ra St. Brown popping up everywhere, because he was his number one wide receiver, and actually looked probably better than I was giving him credit for going in. So, and I think also, though, I think I went into the draft with a bit of bias, because his brother Equinemius St. Brown was drafted by the.
I did not know that was his brother. Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's his brother, and then there's a third brother still in college, I think. So yeah, Equinemius St. Brown. I drafted him in the Powerhouse days when I was playing on that, and he was absolute garbage. So I think I probably dinged Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit because of that as well. Yeah,
right.
It just hasn't lived up to things. So
conscious of time, shall I quickly run through what I thought of yours, and then we can touch on the one we wanted to touch on. I think I feel like I say this all the time, but yeah, I thought you had a really good draft. It is difficult because, as we saw in the previous podcast, my board and your board were fairly similar. So I think I was kind of predestined to like your draft. I know you were disappointed with Javonte Williams, but to pick up Jamar Chase at 6 overall, I thought was incredible. He's going to be awesome for a number of years. He's going to outlast any running back he could have picked there. He's going to be catching passes for the rest of, for a good 10 years yet. So I thought that was incredible. I was very, very pleased for you getting Elijah Moore. We both liked him. I think before the draft, or the sort of few weeks before the draft, I was hoping Elijah Moore might fall to 210 to me, and then as we moved closer to the draft and the draft,
that was never going to happen.
Nah, it was never going to happen. I was just living in cloud
because he was always going at 2.5 if he got
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I will just Nick Bolton. I maybe thought there were better players out there than at linebacker than Bolton, and I know you've picked him because he's at the Chiefs, and there's a massive need at the Chiefs. Who's going to see the field all the time. I just thought there was potentially others available that you could have taken if I was being harsh. And then I thought Josh Palmer in the 5th was a great pick, because he's going to have one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, and Justin Herbert throwing to potentially Kwity Paye again. He's just going to start at the Colts straight out of the bat. They're desperate for help at defensive end, and then Andre Cisco, as we discussed, he gives up a lot of plays, but who cares? It doesn't matter in fantasy, because as long as he gets those takeaways, gets those interceptions, etc., then great. So, I thought he's very good. The only thing I was going to ding you for was you do have to me anyway, I don't know what you think, but you've only got 4 running backs on your roster, 2 of which are Jamal Williams and Devin Singletary. Williams isn't going to start. Singletary is going to be a timeshare with Zach Moss. So I wondered if you might just have targeted. And I know you were going to with Javonte Williams, and you were in a bit of a tough spot, really. But
they're there. I mean, I had four running backs with round one grades in the top four that went: Carter, Harris, Williams, Etienne, and Etienne. Sorry, Roger Goodell. And outside of that, I think throw a net over the rest. They're all very similar to me, and I didn't see the value. I do have a huge need at running back, and I'm aware of that. But what I hope to is, if I stay injury free, I've got Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. So
absolutely,
no one's going to be starting ahead of them anyway. No. So as long as they stay healthy, I'll be fine, and I'll be looking for running backs obviously next year. And like you say, yes, I wanted Williams. Like I'm desperate for Williams, but Ashley's probably done me a favour in the long run. I think I touched on it at the time, because I think actually Jamar Chase, from a fantasy point of view, probably will be there for longer and all the rest of it. And I had more of a need at wide receiver 2-3 than running back 3. So yeah. So then I guess my guess here is that the other person you want to talk about is Mr. Matt, Sean.
Indeed.
So yeah, Sean was picking. What was he picking? 7 in round 1. Yeah. So this is his draft as it happened. So first round, he took Mac Jones, quarterback. Round 2, he took Trey Lance, quarterback. Round 3, he took 2 players. He took Brevin Jordan, the tight end, and Tylan Wallace, wide receiver. Then round 4, he picked somebody who I'd never heard of in Josiah Bronson. Then in round 5, he took Kyle Trask, quarterback. And then in round 6, he took Aaron Donker, who, again, I've never heard of.
The international player pathway player.
Yeah. So I think there are 2 kind of standout points where we've probably both dinged him here. And one is that this league is only a 1 quarterback league. And he already has, I think he has Aaron Rodgers and Ryan Tannehill at quarterback.
Yeah.
So I totally understand picking a rookie quarterback that you're really high on. And for me, that was Trey Lance from a fantasy point of view, not in real life for me, but in fantasy, Trey Lance for me was the number 1 quarterback. So his pickup of Lance in the 2nd round, I think, stunning.
Yes.
Really valuable. But for me, that should have been his round 7 pick, and he shouldn't have been touching another quarterback. There's just no need there, unless he's thinking longer term trade value. That's the only saving grace for me, is that if 2 or more of these quarterbacks pan out really well, he's obviously got trade bait for going forward. But I do think he could have helped his team for the next year or 2 much more by some of his picks. Tylan Wallace, I think he's a decent wide receiver, but he's going to Baltimore and he's not going to see too many catches, even if he was the number 1 wide receiver in Baltimore, let alone the fact that he's probably going to be the number 3 or number 4. Kyle Trask not going to see the field, as we spoke about, and then the 2 defensive players that he took. I mean, again, we may get this really wrong, and he may know something that we don't. But I never heard of either of them, so for me, I can't award great value if I've just never heard of them. So I gave him a C-, and I think you gave him a D, didn't you?
Yeah, I gave him. I mean, if he'd have picked Trey Lance at 2-7, great value, like you said. If he'd have taken him at 1-7, I'd have been absolutely fine with that. There were still some great players on the board at 1-7, even at 2-7. He'd have had a really good choice to do it. I can kind of understand the Trask pick in round 5 if you've only taken one previously. If he's still there and you think he's going to start after Brady and hedge your bets a little bit, I understand that. But Brevin Jordan, I thought was a good pick. He landed a good spot in Houston. He might, if you've got a need at tight end, he might play, but. Yeah, some of it was staggering. He's not helped himself at all this year, and maybe not even next year.
No,
like you say, we could be totally wrong, and it could be the right thing to do. And there is that future trade value, but I couldn't have him have a passing grade, I'm afraid. So I'm sure he'll be absolutely beside himself if he ever hears this. So.
Between obviously all those millions of viewers that are watching and then yourself here,
Yes.
I'll say that I did send him a message after the draft to say, well, clearly Mac Jones is your preferred quarterback. So what's Trey Lance worth to you? And I tried to see if there was any way I could maybe get Lance from him, but he's not responded to me yet. So we'll see what happens on that front. But yeah, so that's pretty much kind of sums up the draft. Mixed bag, but some people did really, really well, and I was kind of okay with mine. I think you were kind of,
I was very pleased. Yeah,
pleased with yours. So yeah, we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding moving forward. So next point, then we wanted to talk about. Let's get rid of that. The NFL schedule was released on Thursday.
Technically Thursday, I think, but on Wednesday in America.
Yeah. So do you want to kind of lead off on that front in terms of you want to talk about like the primetime games and things, didn't you?
Yeah, so I just pulled out some interesting little sort of nuggets out of it, really. So not necessarily games themselves, but number of primetime games that teams have. There's the most that any team has is 5. There's obviously the usual suspects in there, like you would expect: the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Bucks. Recent success, America's team, all of that. We were talking before the pod started. You've got the Steelers in there. We've got 5 primetime games. I think they're going to be terrible this season, so I'm not really seeing that. It's been one. You've got Seattle in there, who I understand, but as we'll get on to, I maybe don't think as highly of them this season. With 4 games, you've got the Bears, the Vikings, the Raiders, the Colts, and the Bills. So I think the Bills have been slighted a little bit there, given what they achieved last season. The Bears, I think, could be good value just with, Fields starting. If Andy Dalton's starting every game, then I really want to watch that. The Raiders, now the Raiders have got 4 games. I'm absolutely staggered. I'm sure Adam will be too. I don't think there's any need to apologise there. 3 games, the ones here that stand out. The Cleveland Browns. They were, arguably they've got one of the best rosters in football at the moment, and if they can take that next step on, they could be in that AFC Championship game this year. So I thought they might have had a few more games.
Washington is one.
Yeah, Washington's a strange one as well, potentially. 2 games, Eagles, Dolphins. Seems about right. I'd maybe say the Dolphins could have had 3. And then with 1 game, as we were discussing, so only 1 primetime game this year, the Jets. They've got Zach Wilson, who they took number 2. I think they've got an exciting new roster. They've got Robert Saleh as a new coach.
Yeah.
They could be quite exciting this year. My Jags, obviously number 1 pick there. Urban Meyer, college coach, some different concepts. Could be something interesting there. And the Bengals, I thought was staggering actually, given the offense they're going to be trotting out. I was very much looking forward to watching them this year. And then the Falcons only have 1 game, and the Falcons are actually quite good. So it didn't feel right seeing them sitting there.
No.
So yeah, I just thought that was just interesting to sort of touch upon briefly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Shared some of those points, like you say. I'm really surprised. Normally, when rookie quarterbacks go high, there's a lot of focus thrown on them, rightly or wrongly. But I'd like to see those quarterbacks as often as possible. So I think to not have as many games is surprising to me from that front. And like you say, with the Bengals as well, I think they're going to surprise a few people if Burrow does come back healthy. So I'm surprised to see that as well. In terms of sort of just the schedule. For week 1, I kind of picked out a few games that I thought are very interesting in week 1, which I thought we could touch on. So the Jets at the Panthers for me is a really, really interesting one, because obviously you've got the Darnold situation. So the Jets have traded Darnold after 2 or 3 years. 3 years, I think, as their starting quarterback. They've obviously decided he's not for them. He can't cut it, and traded him, and then drafted Zach Wilson, number 2 overall, as his successor. So I think that's going to be really interesting if Darnold looks $1 million and Wilson doesn't in that game. The league will probably go, oh my God. Similarly, if Darnold is an absolute flop and Zach Wilson tears it up, Again, it's going to be a storyline either way, whatever happens in that game. I thought it's a really interesting week one.
Yeah,
game.
absolutely. I definitely agree with that.
Dolphins Patriots is another one for me. A big test for New England early doors. The Dolphins, outside of quarterback play, ironically, they were really good last year. They made, I touched on it before, they made the switch too early to Tua from Fitzpatrick last year, and I'm not convinced going forward that their offense is necessarily going to be that great. But they are potentially, the Dolphins, they've potentially got the best. Certainly, they've got the best defense in that division, and then everything. I think there's potential there for them to be rivaling the Bills for that division, and I think it'll be a really good test for New England early doors. See how Cam looks in year two in that offense, and they've spent all that money in free agency, and it'll be an early test to see how well they're gonna play this year. The Packers Saints is another great one for me, and I think I picked this because potentially this is the kind of like the Hall of Famers Bowl. They've lost potentially between them, could have lost Breeze and Rodgers at this point, because there's no guarantee at this point that Aaron Rodgers is coming back next year. He's saying he's not playing for the Packers. What I'm hearing is the Packers are not going to trade him, so he could potentially be walking away. So there'll be no Rodgers and there'll be no Breeze, and you've got these two teams who've been like rivals in the playoffs and stuff recently, and been two of the powerhouses in the NFC. That potentially could be trotting out garbage quarterbacks, it could be a sign for what might come for those
Put
two
some
teams.
respect on Jameis Winston, Mark. How dare you?
From a fantasy point of view, I love him, but he's going to throw 6 or 7 picks in a game, and I suppose the only saving grace there is they don't have any corners, so maybe he'll do all right. But yeah, and then the last one for me was that really stood out from week one is the Jags and the Texans, and for me, the reason for that is that it's the Jags and Trevor Lawrence. You couldn't have picked a better team.
I'm so nervous about that. So nervous.
It's a better team for him to go up against in his first
I know.
week.
But we might lose.
Well, if you do, I mean, it's worrying, isn't it? But I'm sure he'll do well, and I'm sure he'll look good. But yeah, it's the perfect start for him, I think.
It is, but I'm still nervous.
So those were some of the ones that I kind of picked out and thought were really interesting week one fixtures.
No, I like it. I've gone a bit further afield with mine and tried to pick out some different ones. So I'll go chronologically. Week 5, we've got the Bills at the Chiefs. I think that's Sunday Night Football on the 10th of October. It doesn't really need much of an introduction, but it's a rematch of the AFC Championship game from last season. Yeah. The Chiefs won 38-24. You've got Mahomes versus Josh Allen. I mean, they're never on the field at the same time. Does annoy me a bit when you say that, but there you go. I'll let people off with it. It'd be interesting to see if Allen can maintain his form from last season. So we should know that fairly quickly. It'd be great to see what Mahomes looks like against that new offensive line. Obviously, the Bills have invested heavily in edge rushers this draft with Rousseau and Boogie Basham in the second. So it'd be interesting to see if that pays off. So I thought that would be a cracker. Week 8, we've got the 49ers at the Bears. So that's at the end of the month, 31st of October. So, I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be Trey Lance and Justin Fields on the pitch. If it isn't, then we'll just pretend that I ever mentioned it. But that one stood out for me. If it's Lance Fields, I'd be very keen to see that.
Definitely.
See where those teams are. Week 15, we've got the Saints and the Bucks. Jameis Winston revenge game. That is the week before Christmas. So chance for Jameis to prove everybody wrong. I'm gonna text him after this, Mark, and I'm sure he listens every week, so he'll have heard what you said. Give him some ammunition. He'll pin it up on his wall. He'll go out and have an amazing season. So getting his revenge over the Bucks on the 19th of December in week 15. And then the one that really did stand out for me, and clearly this is a homer pick, but you will see why. Jags at Jets, week 16, Boxing Day. You've got Trevor Lawrence, you've got Zach Wilson, you've got the first overall pick against the second overall pick. It'll be very interesting to see where both those teams are.
Yeah.
At that point in the season, I think the Jags. There's potential. We could win that division because the Texans are, quite frankly, awful. The Colts, they've got Wentz at quarterback. Don't really know how that's going to work out. They've definitely got some questions. Have the Titans really improved? I'm not so sure. I think they've gone a bit backwards. I think we've got a really good chance of, Jets too. In theory, I know it's a very strong division that now. With Miami and the Bills and Patriots potentially the third best team, but it'd be interesting to see where Wilson's at and where the Jets are. So that was the sort of one later in the season that stood out for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love it. I love that one. I think, like you say, it'd be interesting to see where they both are at that point and where their respective teams are and how they're faring in their division. Because I see the AFC East as being a very competitive division. I don't necessarily see with the Bills running away with it or anything like that. I think everybody else has kind of improved. So I think, it could be a very competitive division.
I've just got some very quick quirks of the scheduling gods to run through as well, if you'll indulge me. So credit to Gaz for this one. He pointed out in our WhatsApp group, but the Bears have no back-to-back road games this season. They're the only fourth team in the last decade after the 2012 Falcons, 2013 Packers, and 2019 Ravens, and all three of those won their division. The Falcons will not be winning their division. And then apparently since 2015, the Cowboys' result on Thanksgiving has correlated with their playoff fate. So they won on Thanksgiving and made the playoffs in 2016 and 2018. They lost and missed the playoffs in 2015, 2017, 2019, 2020. This year at Thanksgiving, they're hosting the Raiders. They're for what it's worth. Yeah, exactly. They're 2-0 playing the Ravens on Thanksgiving, one of those useless statistics. So I thought that was potentially interesting. And then just on strength of schedule, the Steelers have the toughest strength of schedule based on their opponent's winning percentage from 2020, which is 0.574. The team with the toughest strength of schedule has missed the playoffs in each of the last 4 seasons. 2020, it was the Patriots. They finished 7-9. 2019, it was the Raiders, who finished 7-9. 2018, it was the Packers, who finished 6-9-1, so very nearly 7-9. And then in 2017, it was the Broncos, who finished 5-11. And then on the flip of that, the Eagles have the easiest strength of schedule this year, and they don't have to play a single road game against a team that had a winning record last year, which I thought was stunning. So of their 17 opponents next year, only 3 of them had a winning record in 2020. And also, the Eagles won't be flying that much, as they won't have to get on a plane for the rest of the season following their Week 10 game at Denver, which again I thought was interesting. They're all local after that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think this is why, in a way, the NFL is so good, though, because it's got that level, that equality thing that happens every time. The best teams play the best teams, so they tend to regress a little bit. The worst teams play the easy schedule, so they get better, and the picks are the way they are, and all that. So, I'm still not convinced the Eagles are going to do well, though. But let's just put it that way. I don't care who they're playing or when. They're not going to be very good this year, unfortunately, for Eagles fans out there.
All of which leads us seamlessly on to our far too early season picks.
Yeah. So let's go around. We'll do the AFC first. Let's start on the compass. So, AFC North. Who have you got?
I have the Browns winning the AFC North this year.
Okay.
I just think they've got, their roster's incredibly strong. They look at a totally different team. They were able to take sort of almost luxury players in the draft. They didn't really have that many needs. They got their monkey off the shoulder beating the Steelers back to back. I could see other teams, the Bengals I think will be strong. The Ravens, obviously. I think the Steelers will probably be the 4th place team.
I do agree. I think the Bengals. I think it's a little bit too early for the Bengals.
Yeah.
I think the Steelers are not a great team. They're really not. If Roethlisberger doesn't play outstanding and their defense isn't able to carry them, then they're not a great team outside of some of that. So I do agree that the Steelers won't do much. But I have the Ravens winning the division. I just, until the Browns do it on a consistent basis, they've been so poor for so long. And yes, they were a breath of fresh air last year. Loved watching them play, but I'm not sold completely on Baker Mayfield. And at the end of the day, your team in this day and age of football, your team is the success of your team is linked to your quarterback play. And I'm not convinced that he can, position them at number 1 year in, year out at the moment. So I've gone for the safe pick, really, in the Ravens.
Can't argue with that at all.
AFC East. we see this very, very similarly. We've both got the Bills here. I think, despite the fact that, I mean, I don't have the record from last year in front of me, but obviously they won the division last year. I expect them to do it again, but I don't think it'll be as easy. Like I said before, I expect the division to be more equal, but I do still think they have got the best overall squad. And certainly, if Josh Allen plays anywhere near how he played last year, I think they will win the division. I don't expect him to be quite as good. I think there'll be a little bit of great regression there, but I do still expect them to win that division. The AFC South, we've got a bit of a difference here.
That's because you're wrong.
Because I'm wrong. No, I think it's too early to be crowning the Jags.
Say.
You know, I do. Again, the more and more that I hear of Urban Meyer, the more and more I'm scared.
He's a crazy person, isn't he?
Yeah, it sounds like it. For me, I've just gone with what I consider the best roster, and that's the Colts. Yes,
and the best coach, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you can point to the fact that they're going to be starting Carson Wentz, but you know, everyone, the NFL they're not for long. That's what it stands for, isn't it? As in, like, people just have such short memories. You know, how good was he when he first came into the league? I still believe he can be somewhere near that level at quarterback. I think if you surround him with the right pieces, like he had at the Eagles, I think he will do okay. And he's got such a good team around him, and the defense is good, and they've got a good running game and all the rest of it. Strong offensive line to be able to run the ball. They won't have to rely on him to throw it 50 times a game or whatever. I just see the Colts coming out on top in that division.
Yeah, they just picked up Eric Fisher, haven't they, the past week to replace Anthony Costanzo at left tackle, which was much needed. Otherwise, I think they're rocking out Sam Tevi, who was it Chargers last year. He wasn't particularly effective at blocking. Yeah, I can't argue with that. To be
Tell
honest.
Me why the Jags are your pick then, apart from the fact that they're your
just
two.
Because I want it to happen. To be honest, I was looking at the fact. I think you alluded to it before. So we'll have the fourth place schedule. So in those terms, our schedule is relatively decent. Looking at it from that point of view, obviously Trevor Lawrence. I believe in Trevor Lawrence. I think he's got some weapons. He's got DJ Chark, who I think is a true number one receiver. He's got Laviska Shenault, who came out last year, who I think is a bit more of a gadget player, but I think he's very, very competent. Looking at last season, when we were awful and we were tanking on purpose, even then we lost. I think there were 10 games that we lost by less than one score, and in some of those games we were trotting out Jake Luton. It was just an absolute joke. Shows you how much we were trying to tank for. We've obviously offensively, we've got ETN, we've got Robinson just to complement that as well. There's still a massive glaring need at tight end, and we won't mention TT yet. We can touch on that later in the off season. Defensively, picked a corner. Do I think we're great defensively? Probably not, but linebacker we're very strong at. I think we're stronger than we were last season. Urban Meyer does concern me. He's never coached in the NFL before, but I think some of those college concepts will really help out Lawrence. He's got Etienne there as his safety net, who he knows incredibly well from playing with him at Clemson all those years. I don't believe we'll win the division, but I think we might be in the mix, and I just wanted to put that positive energy out there into the
I think if you, like you said, if your defense was what it was like when Blake Bortles took you to the AFC Championship game, then I think you'd arguably be favourites at this point. But your defense isn't quite there at the moment, is it? It's dropped off a bit. But like you say, your strength of schedule will help. And if you split the games in the division, I can see you beating the Titans. As I say, I think they are going to regress, and I think if you were to have a good game against the Colts, I could see you beating them. So I think it is up for anyone's really, but I do fancy the Colts.
And I think it's probably going to be the worst division in football, truth be told. So
it could very well be
top of that mediocre pile, really.
Yeah, and AFC West, there's not much to say. I think. At the moment, with Broncos starting the quarterback that they have, the only real challenge to the Chiefs is the Chargers. In my opinion, I think they've got a very good roster, and if Herbert plays like he did last year, I do think they will be a challenge. I don't see us winning 13, 14, 15 games this year because I can see the Chargers, being much tougher, and possibly, taking a game off of us, or even 2 potentially. I think they could be that good. But I do see the Chiefs winning the division. I don't think that people have done enough to catch us up. We've strengthened that offensive line, and we've also potentially in Cornell Powell got an absolute steal in the draft if he can actually learn the offense and be the number 2 wide receiver in Sammy Watkins' absence. I think we've potentially improved on offense there. So I do see the Chiefs being winning that division, albeit not at a canter maybe like they have done recently.
Same. I see the Chargers being the nearest challenger. But yeah, I think the Chiefs just going to be too strong. What I do like about the Chiefs is that clearly that offensive line was a massive issue in the Super Bowl, but rather than go out and kind of hope that Fisher came back and hope that Mitchell Schwartz came back, they've gone out and they've identified it. They were in the mix of Trent Williams. They didn't get him. That never came off, but they went straight back out, picked up Orlando Brown. They got Joe Tooney, who's possibly the best guard available in free agency. Bringing Kyle Long out of retirement is probably a bit of a gamble, but if Duvernay Tardif comes back, you can slot him in. So yeah, I really like that. That was a position of weakness, and now I would say that's quite a big position of strength. I do think. Yeah,
sorry, go on. I was just going to say that I agree. It's definitely positive what they did. I'm slightly concerned about the amount of money they had to spend to do it, and what they might even then have to spend on Orlando Brown. And there's risk there that if he doesn't play particularly well, that we might not even extend him potentially. And then you're talking about a 1-year rental for your first round pick, which is a little bit devastating from my point of view. But we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah. I think the Chargers will be the closest challengers. Like we said, they've made some good moves as well.
So then the NFC. So we'll go NFC North, and you've got the Bears.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to change it actually, if I'm honest, and go Vikings. I'm thinking. So this is all based on Aaron Rodgers not playing for Green Bay, which is everything we're hearing. The reason I had the Bears in there was, I was thinking if Fields came in, but I'm thinking Dalton will probably end up playing 8 games. The rest of the roster probably isn't strong enough at the moment. The Vikings, I think, have been there, have done it. I think Mike Zimmer's a very good coach. Kirk Cousins, for all the abuse he gets, he's a very, he's a steady quarterback. He's maybe not going to wow you and thrill you, but he's not going to cost you any games. They're trying out Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson at wide receiver, very strong. Dalvin Cook, one of the best running backs in the league. The defense is strong. And if Rodgers isn't at the Packers, if they're starting Jordan Love, the Bears, I think, will be frisky. I think the Bears will be close. I think the Bears might be there or thereabouts. Clearly, because I put them down initially, and the Detroit Lions are just going to suck. So
the Lions are not going to. It's way too early for them to be doing anything. We'll see what happens with the Lions. I mean, arguably, like you say, if Rodgers doesn't play, the Vikings will have the best quarterback in theory, certainly in this year. Maybe not looking to the future with Fields, but in terms of this this Fields' first year, you don't expect him to be, come straight up to speed necessarily. So they've arguably got the best quarterback for this 1 year, the Vikings. But I still went for the Packers. I think, despite what I said earlier in terms of, I don't necessarily expect him to come back, because I think he's a stubborn son of a gun, Rodgers, and he said what he said, and he doesn't want to play for them. But I don't know, part of me just thinks until it happens, I can't quite believe that he'll walk away. So I think I've kind of said the Packers on the basis that somehow I expect that to work out. And also, if it doesn't, they've signed Blake Bortles, so, hoorah. So then the NFC East, we've both gone the same way here. I think with the football team, it was close for me, because I do rate Dak and that offense at the Cowboys. So it was close, but I just feel that the football team's defense was so strong last year and will be potentially even better this year, that they're not gonna have to score that many points. But potentially with Fitzpatrick, if he can kind of get his head around that offense early doors and play well, they could be really, really strong, Washington. So I do think they start the favourites for me.
Same reasons for me. Fitzpatrick's an upgrade at quarterback from Dwayne Haskins or Alex Smith or Taylor Heineke or Kyle Allen or whoever. He's going to have Terry McLaurin to 30. He's going to have Diami Brown, who they picked up in the draft. Cam Sims, I think, made some good plays last season. They've got some weapons. Got Antonio Gibson at running back, who I think is potentially, quite underrated there. A great season for them last season. And yeah, defensively, they're just so strong. And Ron Rivera, he's been about. He's been to a Super Bowl. I think Ron Rivera is a very good coach, and he'll do what he can to get the best out of them. Do like the Cowboys as well. I'm totally with you, but I'm not sure they've really improved the defense. I was listening to the Around the NFL podcast today, and Steve Weish called them the Alice Cowboys, so ALLAS without the D, which I thought was quite good. I know they went and picked up a couple of linebackers, but they were fine at linebacker. Linebacker wasn't the issue last season. It was
I don't know.
I know, but it wasn't killing them. It wasn't killing them. The corner, safety, secondary, that's where they needed it.
Yeah, no, it wasn't their worst area on defense, but it was. They've still massively upgraded, in my opinion, and I think there wasn't the value necessarily to go anywhere else. But but I do agree that defensively they're not good enough.
You're asking Dak to score 35, 40 points a game. It's
which he was doing.
He was
injured, to be fair to him, but you can't expect that. No, so no. I do think the football team start the favourites. NFC South, I think anybody who doesn't say at this point, is probably out of their mind or clearly picking for their own team. So we'll skip over that. And then the NFC West, it's notoriously difficult to pick. Sometimes for good reasons. In terms of three teams being really good and Arizona being at the bottom, that's kind of how it's been of recent. But I think it's going to be a lot closer. I really struggled to pick this, and I think the reason that I've gone with the Rams, who's the same as you think there, is I think that 49ers I think could quite easily win this division. I think the Seahawks is a bit of a stretch, but for me it's between the Rams and the 49ers. And now I'm kind of questioning myself and thinking, actually, do I think the 49ers? But I think it's a bit of a toss-up. The Rams defense is very good. And I think with Stafford there potentially at quarterback, is definitely an upgrade on what they've had recently. And I think that's what probably pushed me towards them. But if the 49ers won the division, it would not surprise me at all.
Same. I'm very intrigued to see what Matt Stafford could do in that offense. So I think he's a big upgrade from Jared Goff, and I kind of want him to be successful. I think he deserves to have some success after his career so far. I think he's unfairly maligned. They've obviously got a very strong defense there. They did lose Brandon Staley to the Chargers, so that'll hurt them some. I didn't like them picking Tutu Atwell in the draft. That was a crazy decision, but you've got McVay there. They're returning to good players. Cam Akers had a broke out later in the season at running backs. They've got that position nailed down. I just believe in them a bit more. Niners, absolutely. I went back and forth on. Kyle Shanahan has only had one winning season since he took over. Admittedly, he did turn to the Super Bowl in that winning season. And it has all been when Jimmy Garoppolo's got injured, which is why they've got Lanson as the backup, potentially for this season. It wouldn't surprise me if the Niners won it. Yeah, Seahawks, slightly more surprising just with where they are at the moment. But, Pete Carroll's a genius, and if anybody can coach that team up, it's going to be Pete Carroll. And then, the Cardinals, I'm with you, as you said earlier. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury's took them on a lot, so I think they might be, Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim, the GM, might be looking for work this time next year.
Yeah, definitely. Right, okay then. So that kind of wraps up our picks. Feel free to tell us how wrong you think we are and all the rest of it. With that, if you have any strong opinions either way. So I guess that just leaves me with the whinge of the week. It's my turn, and I think I am going to touch on something you mentioned very briefly, and those who weren't concentrating and listening hard won't necessarily have picked up on it. But the magic that is Tim Tebow has obviously signed for the Jags. Now, let me just preface this by saying that I am a big Tebow fan on some levels, right? I love the guy. He's the most positive person I think I've ever met. And outside of his kind of holiness that he kind of presents all the time, which I don't particularly like, I do think he's a really good guy. And I was pulling for him when he was in the NFL. Even though he was at the Broncos, I always like to see him do well. I thought he did it differently, obviously, and it was really intriguing to see him play absolutely awful for 3.5 quarters and then somehow mount these ridiculous comebacks in the fourth quarter. I was such a Tebow fan, and but he's been out of the NFL for however many years, 8 years.
2012 was the last time he played.
Really, 9 years. Then he's 30 odd years old. Yes, people will say, "Oh yeah, well he's really athletic," and no, he can run through people, but I don't see him as an athletic person. I just don't see this working out. And I think what's happened here, I think it's Urban Meyer trying to be clever. And so it's kind of a Tim Tebow, Urban Meyer whinge this, in that some people have sort of said that what Urban Meyer's doing is it's genius because he's got Tebow and all the focus is going to be on Tebow and it's not going to be on Lawrence. And therefore, Lawrence isn't going to have all this pressure being the number one pick and having to carry the franchise. My view on that is if your quarterback and the number one overall pick can't take the pressure of being the number one overall pick, you pick the wrong person. Yeah. And so it's just nonsense. It's fluff. It's not needed. He isn't gonna do anything unless he's got visions of him playing like a Taysom Hill role or something. But then you're taking away from one of Lawrence's strengths because he can run the ball. I just don't get it, and I think it's a stupid move. Yeah, I just don't get it.
I don't get it either, but I don't think it matters. I don't think he's going to make the roster. I don't think we'll be talking about this come week 2 of the season. To be perfectly honest, I think if he was going to do this, he should have done this 9 years ago. But equally, I'd have seen him more as a middle linebacker, maybe not a tight end. Just with he'll run through anything. He'll just keep, like you said, he's so competitive and he so wants to play and wants to do it. I could see him, being a bit of a linebacker, maybe tight end potentially, but not now, not at 33 years old.
Well, I was listening to a podcast, I forget which one it was, earlier on in the week, and they were talking about this and the fact that outside of quarterback, tight end is potentially one of the hardest positions to play because you've got to know you're obviously at the end of the line, and you've got to understand all the blocking assignments together with all the wide, all the receiving alignments and things like that, and it's quite a technical position. And Tim Tebow has kind of proven that he can't really play and get that technical side from a quarterback from his time in the league, and that was when he was in his prime. I just don't see him, converting to that tight end and it working. I really don't. I think it's somewhat of a publicity stunt, and it's just not needed.
So do I. I ultimately don't think it matters. He's not going to be there. But yeah, I agree. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
45,000 people added him to their fantasy rosters.
No apparently. Way. Well, apparently 40,000 have added Blake Bortles to their fantasy rosters. So I mean,
crazy. It just proves that at this point in the year, from a fantasy football point of view, there's not a lot going on, is there? If you're picking up Tim Tebow.
No.
So on that obvious fourth down conversion, I think we will call it a day on the Fourth and Whinges podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Catch you next time.
See ya.